Hello students, today we are going to study the fifth chapter of your political science book Democratic Politics. The chapter's name is Democratic Rights. So before we start the chapter Democratic Rights, let us first understand what is the meaning of true democracy. So students, true democracy means where a democratic government respects the rights of its individuals. This is called a true democracy. So now let us understand the content of your chapter Democratic Rights. So what are we going to study in this part? So students, in this part we will be going to study the case studies of Guantanamo Bay, Saudi Arabia and Kosovo. So students, in previous chapters you have studied about democratic government, why we need a democratic government, designing of the constitution, knowing about the election procedure and three main organs of democratic government. In this chapter Democratic Rights, we will be discussing about the importance of rights, how is life without rights, why do we need rights, and what are our rights, who guards our rights. So in this part we will be focusing mainly on the importance of rights and how life will be without rights. So let us now find out an example how life will be without rights. So here we can see an example here which happened after 9/11 attacks in USA in 2001. It was a prison which was set up by the US Navy, Guantanamo Bay. So students, here you can see a picture of the prisoners who are imprisoned in the prison called Guantanamo Bay, which was set up by US Navy. About 600 people secretly picked up by the US forces from all over the world and kept in a prison called Guantanamo Bay. So what is this Guantanamo Bay is exactly? The Guantanamo Bay is a US detention center where all over the world nearly 600 people have been imprisoned here, which is located very close to Cuban Island. The authority of the Guantanamo Bay is only accessed by the US Navy. So here comes the question, why these prisoners were imprisoned in this Guantanamo Bay prison? The answer of the question why is the arguments of US government was that they were enemies of US and linked to the attack on New York on 11 September 2001. So students, US government argued that the prisoners were linked with the incident of New York attack of 9/11. So they have been imprisoned these 600 peoples. So the Guantanamo Bay where the prisoners were imprisoned, where those people were imprisoned by the US authority is a place where severe atrocities have happened. The US forces have picked up the people from various corners of the world. You can say randomly they picked up the people and pressurized them to know who is the mastermind behind the 9/11 attack. And in this process, to know the reason behind the attack, they forced the people and tortured the people pathetically. It didn't even follow the international agreement which has to be made even with the war refugee, the war criminals, and also the refugees or war criminals cannot be treated like this. So you can say they have violated the rights of those peoples whom they imprisoned in the Guantanamo Bay randomly only on the basis of assumption. Okay. So see here, the arrest was without any information or notice. Their families also did not know about that why they have been arrested, the family had no clue about that. No one, even in this prison, Guantanamo Bay, no one was allowed to meet the prisoners, and there was no trial before the magistrates. So students, when we say this or that people is accused, to be go through the trial process, we need to be proceed that person before magistrate. But here nothing has happened. They randomly picked up the people and imprisoned them in Guantanamo Bay, and they severely tortured them, and even they did not fulfill the basic rights of them, or you can say they didn't have validated the rights of those people. So here we can see a picture of a man. Who is this man? So students, the name of this man is Jamil A. Bana. So maybe question arises in your mind, who is this man Jamil A. Bana? Okay, let me answer this question. The Jamil al-Bana is one prisoner among the 600 prisoners who have been imprisoned by the US authority in Guantanamo Bay. So students, here you can see a picture of a man. The name of this man is Jamil A. Bana, and her daughter's name is Anna. So why I am talking about this man and her daughter? Because the incident of Guantanamo Bay came to light when Anna's father Jamil al-Bana has been missing, and they do not know where he was kept. Is he alive or dead? It is not only even the story of Anna's father Jamil al-Bana, but also it is the story of 600 people who have been imprisoned in the prison called Guantanamo Bay, which was set up by the US authority. They had seen a condition where basic rights were not being validated. As I previously told you, the basic rights of the prisoners were not met by the US authority in the prison called Guantanamo Bay. Looking at the condition, the prison started to protest, and they went on hunger strikes for many days, but no one cared about them. Only through the news channels, the family members of Jamil al-Bana and other family members of the prisoners get to know that her father has been imprisoned at a place called Guantanamo Bay. And it is very sad to know that no media, no lawyer, or no government officials other than the US Navy were not allowed to meet the prisoners. So students, here we can say this is a clear case of infringement of fundamental rights. What is the meaning of infringement? Infringement means violating. So we can say this is a clear case of violating of fundamental rights of those 600 prisoners by the US authority in the detention center called Guantanamo Bay. So here, Amnesty International, a non-profit organization who mainly worked on the issues of human rights, worked over this and highlighted the issue. So students, here you can see the picture of the prisoners who were imprisoned in the Guantanamo Bay and how they have been tortured. You can clearly see the pictures. So the Amnesty International has brought to light how the people are suffering in the Guantanamo Bay, how they have been tortured, and when the prisoners went on to the hunger strike, how passively the officials reacted without responding for them, without giving the basic requirement for them, and they did not even follow the international treaties which are there for prisoners. nothing has been followed with the Amnesty International bringing the issue on the light. The UN has set up a special body to inquire whether this was happened or not. But unfortunately, this was happened. This happened, but the UN could not do anything. UN asked the US government to shut down the detention center and release all the prisoners free. But officially, those prisoners were not let out. So the situation of the life becomes very difficult even to breathe when they don't have any rights. If a government has a doubt on anyone, then they have to arrest them, have to produce them before the magistrate. They have to bring it to the notice of the public. Here there are no trials, no magistrate, and no laws has been followed. And this is a very pathetic and unfortunate situation. So, students, we have discussed here the incident of Guantanamo Bay. So, let us now discuss about another incident. Till now, we have discussed about the Guantanamo incident, which is an example where one country violates the rights of another country. Moving on to understand the rights or no rights for the people in their own country. So, here we will study about the case of Saudi Arabia. Now, we will study the case study of Saudi Arabia. The case of Saudi Arabia and position of the citizen with regard to their government. So, students, the rule of hereditary king prevails in Saudi Arabia. People have no role in electing or changing their ruler. So, what is the meaning of hereditary here? So, we can say, students, the Saudi Arabia ruled by a king. The king comes to power on the hereditary basis. The family rules, the father passes away. Automatically the son comes into the throne. For there is no power for the people, the public to do. Then the king selects the legislature, executive and judiciary. The council ministers, the legislative members, the judiciary members, everybody whom the king feels he is fit and capable will be appointed. Then the citizens cannot form any political parties. So we can say there is no political freedom prevail in Saudi Arabia. Then the media is not free at all. What is the meaning of the media is not free at all? Its meaning is the media or the press cannot report what is happening in the ground reality. If there is an atrocity is happening in any official, that cannot be reported. It has to be get consent of the king. So no media or no freedom of press is there. Anything or any issue reported against the king cannot be telecasted. Then another point is no freedom of religion. So students, there is no freedom of religion in Saudi Arabia. First, we have discussed how the hereditary rule is followed. Then we saw how the king selects the legislature, executive and judiciary, how there was no political freedom is there, how the freedom of press is not prevailing there. Then comes the no freedom of religion. What is the meaning of no freedom of religion? So students, other than Muslim, there is no official religion in Saudi Arabia. You are free to follow any religion other than the Muslim, but you can follow only in private, not in public. Then last but not the least, a serious point restriction against women. There is a severe restriction against the women. Women are not allowed to walk freely on the road even. Women are not even justified with equal rights to men. So the last point is the testimony of a man is equal to women. Women are just treated like slaves there. So see how much disparity is there. They don't have any equality, no mutual respect. They do not have equal rights to vote. This is with the citizens of Saudi Arabia. The king is the whole and soul of the supreme. Now, students, we have discussed a case of Guantanamo Bay. Then we have discussed the case of Saudi Arabia. Now, look at one more example where ethnic massacre happened. It is at Kosovo, which was earlier a part of Yugoslavia before it got split. This was a real incident which happened. In Yugoslavia, the population of Yugoslavia in Kosovo. What is ethnic massacre in Kosovo? So, Kosovo was a province of Yugoslavia. The population composition of the province was majority Albanians, but in country Serbs were in majority. The Albanians in the Kosovo are overwhelmingly present, but they are in minority, where the Serbians are in majority. Then the Milosevic, a person, came to power. Okay. So who was hailing from the Serbian family? Students, here you can see the picture of Milosevic, who was elected, okay, through the democratic process of elections. He wanted to set a dominant standard. He wanted to dominate the Serbians to be the dominant people, and he wanted the Albanians to either run away or obey the dominance of Serbians. The narrow-minded Serbs nationalist leader Milosevic won the election, and he is very hostile towards the Albanians of Kosovo. So they had a viewpoint that Albanians either should have left the country or accept the dominance of Serbs. So in order to make them agree, in order to make them home agree, in order to make them Albanians agree, the Milosevic used military methods, tortured the people like anything. Let us look at one of the incidents which happened. This incident is about a Albanian family. The story of an Albanian family in a town in Kosovo. So what is the story? Student, let us discuss the story. So this is a story of an Albanian family in a town in Kosovo. There was a massacre of Albanians carried out by the army of their own country. So students, here you can see the pictures of ethnic massacre which happened in Kosovo. So let us move to the story. So students, this is a story of a 74-year-old Batisha Hawks was sitting with her husband who is 77-year-old, whose name is Isaac. Batisha and Isaac were sitting close to a stove to warm up themselves. Suddenly, a sound came. Bombs were dropped in the streets of Kosovo. The people understood that the Serbians army has entered the streets or their city. Even they could not realize in a fraction of time 5 to 6 soldiers have broken the door and entered into the house, shouting in front of Batisha, "Where are you children? Where are you children?" The Batisha was totally in shock. The shocked Batisha looking at them, and in that shock, by the time she realized and come out from the shock, she was able to see her husband Isaac lying down, and 3 bullets were shot in his head. Isaac. She could observe that Isaac is losing his life in front of her, and she was dragged by the soldiers from the house and thrown onto the streets, and in front of her the house has been blasted. She was standing in the streets in the rain, and she was watching that except her clothes she has nothing left with her. It is a military action. The government is sponsoring this one. The elected leader of the country did this ethnic massacre. The reports of the thousands of Albanians were really pitiful. We cannot even read the articles about them, how they were being tortured. The appeal was made to the international organizations that the international organizations have stepped in. The investigation was started. It was proved that Milosevic, who has been appointed through the democratic elections, has done international crimes against the humanity. So he was being thrown away from the power. He lost the power. He was being arrested by the International Court of Justice and brought trial against the crime he was done against humanity. So students, what lessons we have learned from this discussion? Firstly, we have discussed about the case Guantanamo Bay. Secondly, we have discussed the case of Saudi Arabia. And thirdly and lastly, we have discussed about the case Kosovo. So what we have learned from this? We have learned the infringement of rights can happen anytime and by anyone. So what is the meaning of infringement here? Infringement means violation. So students, we can say the violation of rights or infringement of rights can happen anywhere and by anyone. And we have studied this lesson or learned this lesson from the cases of Guantanamo Bay, Saudi Arabia and Kosovo. So students, we have discussed the case studies. Now it's time to solve some question answers. The first question is, what is Guantanamo Bay and what is it known for? I hope you can solve these questions as I have discussed it. Okay, the answer of the question, let me answer you. The answer of this question is, Guantanamo Bay is an area near Cuba controlled by the American Navy. It was known as a prison where the Americans kept 600 people without trial on suspicion of taking part in attack on New York on September 11, 2001. Now I have a second question for you. See, what is this question? Which organization reported about human rights violation in Guantanamo Bay? The answer is Amnesty International. Amnesty International, an international human rights organization, tried to expose the violation of human rights. Then let's see what is the third question I have for you. The third question is, mention one fundamental rights which the Saudi Arabia denies to its citizens. The students try to recall the discussion which I have discussed with you about the case Saudi Arabia. Then you can easily solve this question. Let us see the answer of this question. The answer of this question is the citizens cannot form any political parties as we have discussed. Media cannot write anything that the king does not like. So we can say the freedom of speech and expression is denied here. Then moving on to the fourth question. The fourth question is, how are the rulers of Saudi Arabia elected? The answer of this question is, I hope you can solve the question. So see what is the answer. The country is ruled by a hereditary king and the people have no role in electing or changing their rulers. So on the hereditary basis, the rulers have been selected. Then the last question is, why did ethnic massacre take place in Kosovo? Students, try to recall the case of Kosovo, then you can only solve the question. So let us see what is the answer of this question. Why did massacre took place in Kosovo? Why? So let us see the answer. Kosovo, a province of Yugoslavia, had majority of population of Albanians, but Serbs were in majority in the entire country. The government of Milosevic was hostile to the Kosovo Albanians. He ordered the massacre of Albanians who did not leave the country. So students, I hope you all have enjoyed the discussion and learned from the discussion. So what we have learned in this part, we have discussed about the case of Guantanamo Bay, Saudi Arabia and Kosovo, which case studies were related to the issue of democratic rights. And in the next part, we will be discussing the rest portions. Thank you so much.